Can I make a general comment on the amendments as I see them before me? First of all, I want to come to your amendment now in a second, Minister. But first of all, I'm really astonished to see Deputy Kelly's amendment ruled out of order, because what Deputy Kelly's amendment was trying to do, that's Amendment 3 and 28, was trying to do was to deal with the outcome of what happened with Cleary's, the Duffy-Cahill report. And
Deputy Smith, we're not addressing 3 at this
Yeah,
point.
I just want to, I know we're not addressing it because it's ruled out of order. Yeah. And I just want to ask why it has been ruled out of order, because I would have thought, Karen, that the obvious thing for the government to do would be to use the opportunity of this legislation for you indeed, Minister, to legislate on the back of the Duffy-Cahill report and not to allow another Cleary's situation happen. So I just would like to ask you to address that question. But on your own amendment and the fact that I spoke to Deputy Collins earlier on, and he's withdrawn his amendments for yours, and I'm really kind of, on the one hand, I'm thinking, well, I see that you're both on the same page, but on the other hand, I'm really kind of thinking to myself, what's the point in this legislation at all? Now, I know you give a very generous period of time to suspend the implementation of the rules about limited and unlimited companies, but it's an extraordinarily generous period of time. And I assume when you're referring to the uncertain period we're living in, you're referring to Brexit. And yet we expect the Brexit negotiations to be completed and the changes to be on the road within 2 years. And you're allowing 5 years for companies to make up their minds about what way they want to restructure on the basis of declaring themselves unlimited and not showing their profits and their accounts in this country. I have a real problem with that, and I really want to argue hard that if you allow this amendment to go through, if we pursue this amendment, if we vote for this amendment, then there was no point in having this whole exercise. The whole bill is negated by allowing it. And I refer to a situation that we had here last summer in the Parliament when there was an issue of bin charges and the whole standing charge being raised by something like 200% for citizens for bin collection throughout the state. And when it became a big political issue here on the floor, we discover in the course of it that there's a whole group of companies, as you refer to them, who are unlimited and registered offshore. And therefore, when it came to the problem of determining, do the waste management companies have an issue with the amount they can charge per lift or per standing charge per year, because they were declaring poverty and were nearly broke and all the rest of it. But when you tried to look at it, you couldn't find out their financial condition. Panda Waste were moved to the Isle of Man. City Bin were in Jersey. Oxygen, the Isle of Man. Killarney Waste, New Zealand. Country Cleaning Recycling, the British Virgin Islands. Likewise, Clean Refuse and Recycling, and Greyhound, one of the biggest of them, in the Isle of Man. Now, I see a real problem with allowing this situation to continue, and even taking into account your argument that we're in uncertain times, and you might clarify for me if you're referring to Brexit or just the general uncertainty of the financial and capitalist world that we live in, which seems to continually throw everybody into turmoil. Even if you argue that, you're giving 5 years of a period to allow them, that you're going to delay it or suspend it for 5 years, which will mean that you're possibly not going to be sitting in that chair in 5 years' time, because it'll be in the period of the next Dáil, or maybe even the one after that. God knows. But I think that we should object to this amendment, because 5 years is an extraordinarily over-generous period of time to allow companies restructure in line with Brexit. If it is Brexit you're referring to, if it's not, can you please explain? And I want to object to this amendment. And I think if we don't object to it, we negate the whole purpose of this bill.
Deputy Collins.